And where would you draw the line with an Alonso contract?
Props, right, Sal?
Yes,
here we go. Here's my call. I'm going 5 years, 185 million total, 37 million per year. That gives him the first base average annual value record over Vlad Guerrero, which I think would be a nice nod to Pete. Look, I mean, it would start in his age 31 season, so I'm not going to 7 years, and I'm not sure that the industry will go to 7 years with him, Sal. But I do like the idea of giving him, look, agents want to conquer the market. They want to set records, and I think the 37 million would be a good boost for Pete, a good thing to, the sort of trophy of the contract besides the great money would be that. So there I am.
Go ahead, Dan.
You guys got a lot more money flowing around than I do, apparently. I don't know. I mean, I'm with you with the 5 years and everything, but I was only thinking maybe somewhere around 150. Still makes him the highest paid first baseman in baseball, $30 million a year over Vlad. And look, eventually when you're talking about somebody in his age 31 season, as you said, and even with a 5-year deal, you have to start thinking about a transition to DH at some point. And you're going to have to see that incorporated because let's not forget, at the end of the season, David Stearns talked about what failed this team this year, and it was run prevention more than anything else. And you can expect them to be very busy this offseason at trying to get better in defense, pitching, whatever it is to keep runs off the board here. We know Pete's liabilities at first base. And I don't know if they're going to bring in somebody else to maybe alleviate some of that burden over there. But over time, you know that he's going to eventually be moved away from the position full time.
Yeah, 100%, which is why I would have my offer contingent on DH. I mean, you can play a little first, but you got to be a DH there. And I'm not going any more than 6 years, 170 million. Now, I don't even care about the years necessarily. To me, it's about the total dollar value. You want to go 6, 7 years, whatever. I am not extending beyond 170 million. I think 185 is absurd. 37 million a year for Alonso is absurd. I was more with you, Dan, 150, and then I started thinking about, okay, well, if the market dictates 160, 170, all right. If the market says that, I'd be willing to go to 170. At some point, you got to draw the line. Hence the segment.
Well, like you said, we'll see what everybody else does, right? Because there wasn't that big of a market for him last winter.
I'm drawing the line at 170. Okay, so what's the difference with this winter and last winter?
Well, why are years less important to you than the money?
Because you could just divvy it up the money any way you want. Over the course of 7 years, 170 million is less per year than it is for 6. The money's going to be
long-term commitment. Is
I don't care because you could cut them by year.
GM's pause though.
But what's the difference?
Because they have commitments going forward, so fewer year-wise commitments. The saying, there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal. That's absolutely true, even if you're paying too much money for the player because the contract ends. That's why I'm holding at 5 years here, because I feel like if you go deeper into Pete's career, then you are dealing with the problems that will come up toward the end of any contract that he signs in this winter. You're dealing with them more and more going forward for an extra year there.
Yeah, look, if he needs 170 for 5, I'd strongly think about it. I am not expending beyond $170 million. I'm not extending beyond that. So to me, the money is primary. If you don't like it in the last 2 years of the deal, see you later. You move on from those 2 years. The money is spent regardless. All right, let's take a look at what Jim Duquette proposed for Alonso about 2 weeks ago, brought to you by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Jim had 5 years, $35 million a year for a total of $175. This was with comparisons to deals for both Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson that they signed in the 2022 offseason. Alonso younger than Freeman was and more productive than Olson was before their deals, but also a liability defensively. Hey, why don't we just talk to Jim Duquette as we make the call to the bullpen? Jim, is a 7-year deal for Alonso realistic?
I don't think it's realistic. I mean, listen, I never bet against Scott Boras, who represents Pete and how he's good. When he starts putting these numbers out, a lot of that is kind of getting the market going and the expectations going. I don't see teams going to that 7 years. That's why I keep bringing up those first basemen. I know Freeman's at 6. Olson's at 6. It's lesser dollars. I know it was a few years ago. The relevancy of it, though, is important because that's where the top end of the market is for first baseman. And that's where Pete is. And as you suggested, Sal, potentially going into that DH role as much as, next year, 40 games, 50 games, whatever it is. If he gets the money, he's willing to do it. I feel that strongly. The reason why I went to 175 over 5, you could say over 6. is the fact that the dollar amount will matter. If you add it to the 1 year 27, I think that he earned this year, that total 6 for 200, over 200 would be, the largest in the third largest in the organization, highest ever for a first baseman outside of Vladdy Guerrero. And those are all numbers that are important, for Scott Boras to try to attain or try to reach. If the AAV was close to Vladimir Guerrero, I think that the Mets can get him. So there's a lot of reasons there. I do think holding the line would be good. The other aspect of that is, man, you don't want this thing to go out and drag out like it did last year. It was just awful. And you run out of options too. So that's one. And number two, if Schwarber signs, that might pull Pete up a little bit too. If Schwarber, because I think Schwarber might get $40 million a year on a lesser number of years, but $40 million a year, which I think generally will pull up Pete because the offensive numbers are similar between the two of those guys.